The game is in front of us. It is exciting. So Himiyana, I think there were some questions in the chat that I just want to answer real quick. So people were asking, what's this map? What's special about it? So it's kind of a bit like Prairie, where your map starts up on this hill, kind of like a mix of Prairie, Cauldron, and what's it called? With all the stealth forest. I actually forget the name.
With the stealth
One of the
forest,
OG
are you
maps.
thinking base? Highview.
Highview. Yeah. It's kind of like that in terms of the layout, right? So it's kind of got that, like, a mix of all three. So you start on this little hill, which gives you a nice vision advantage. There's some slight cliffs sometimes, but mostly just this nice little hill. Then down in the center, there's a pond with a little bit of shorefish, and on the sides of the map, there's quite a lot of wood. So it's not quite the same as Prairie, where you just run out right away. This map has a lot more wood. And from the rest of it, there's just 2 sacred sites in the center of the map and 2 trade posts kind of on the edges.
Now, something to keep in mind is the lack of big wood lines around you at the start. So while it seems like when you hear the words hill and mixing in some more defensively focused maps, that you'd be safe, you're not going to be. It's very easy to kind of shut you down if you try to play full greed. You're going to have to fight for a little bit of ground here, which is why Himayama is definitely going to be, I think, a very popular competitive map. But with the Ayyubids Byzantines matchups, let's break these things down a bit. You're seeing this cistern on your screen. This is not for peeing in. This is drinking water, folks. So chill. And it's going to rejuvenate all your villagers so that they feel enthusiastic about working. Because for every level that the cistern has, you will get a 5% buff to gathering rates on villagers in the range, in that radius. You also have 3 abilities you can switch between. You've got Conscriptio, which per level adds an extra 20% into the production rates of buildings, military buildings in range. You could go into the Dialecticus, which is going to give you a research rate increase. This, by the way, is critical because look how big that increase is, 50, 100, 150, 200, so on. And then finally, you have got your Praesidium, which is just great when you find yourself being raided by Mongols and they're burning down your buildings because you can reduce the damage that would be taken by things in range. And I believe this is the point now, after I've just waffled all that off, where my own waffle man can explain how you get the better rates on these systems.
Yeah, so basically you're going to be making a network, right? It's a bit of like a how do you say? You're just building up a network. I don't know what a correlation would be, but basically you have these cisterns and you connect them via the aqueduct, and with these connections, the cisterns that get connected together will collectively increase the level of the bonus they're providing. That is both the aura, which is the ring around the cistern. It'll improve that gather rate, and it will improve the influence, which is the box around the cistern, and that it'll improve both of them collectively. Meanwhile, we do have the Grand Winery on the screen. This landmark does improve the olive oil, which is, there's a lot to talk about with Byzantines if we're trying to describe everything. There's a lot, and it's happening in front of us.
Okay. Let's go for the simple one first then.
Mercenaries, there's things, there's that, there's this, there's more.
We're going to need to basically pitch a 3-year university course to be able to explain the Byzantines, so we can quickly rapid fire off the differences of the Ayyubids. They have these very quirky designs around their wings. You know how the Abbasids is usually like, I can always come back for it? That's not the way this civ works, right? When you make a choice with one of these wings, that's it. You can't come back around and get something later.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really different approach on the House of Wisdom. So for Abbasid, you might be thinking the playstyle is you're kind of globally buffing your empire with these technologies, right? You're doing these researches that improve everybody's lives. They give you tons of like these eco bonuses, all your units get better, this, that, right? And it's kind of these global buffs. Meanwhile, with the Ayyubids, the focus is much more centralized, right? You're kind of focusing on getting this one really potent building. You can make it train units, you can give it, these traders will come to the building itself, you can have it spawn the camel, the desert raider quite a lot. Like there's a lot going on with this landmark.
And they scale based on the age, right? So for example, you're seeing here that he went for the Eco Wing growth, which is going to increase the amount of berries in all these upgraded berry patches by 50. On top of that, it's instantly going to spawn 3 villages for him. So there you go, went from 350 to 400. But if he took that in Castle Age, instead he would have got 6 villages and he would have added an extra 100 food to each of the berry groves. So you've got to be really thoughtful about when you select these. There's a lot of interesting quirks. You mentioned, for example, under the military wing, there's a desert raider spawner where it spawns, I think it's 1 desert raider every X minutes. But if you took it later on, it'd be 2 in Castle Age or 3 in Imperial. So you have to really kind of think methodically about your strategy overall. I always say the Abbasids now has one of the kind of most diverse approaches to the games because there's so many options. But in a way, you kind of have that insulation of coming back. Meanwhile, this civ, your choices feel a bit more permanent.
Yeah, exactly. The different like selection paths on the House of Wisdom for Ayyubids is really crazy. The number of different strategies that we were thinking about, like that you can make. There's so many different build orders. There are so many different combinations, and with this landmark, like you said, because it scales, it's not like the permutation is irrelevant here, right? Like with normal Abbasid, the permutation, like by late game, the permutation didn't matter, right? It's like, oh, like I still have boot camp whether I went the military wing in feudal age or castle age, right? Whereas here, the permutation does matter. If you get the order, like getting the 3 vills and the 50 food is much different than getting, the 10 vills or whatever it is, right? Like these scaling elements matter quite a lot for how the game is going to play out. And yeah, there's just a lot of different ways to approach the Ayyubid build orders.
And I think we need to rapidly go across the Byzantines again, because right now people are like, what the hell are all these things he's building right now? What is that green thing on the side? I didn't realize that Mr. was an olive oil farmer, but apparently he is when he whips out the Byzantines, because this civ has a unique 5th resource.
Yes, and the olive oil is generated through various food sources in the game. Basically, the main one is through the olive grove, which is their unique farm. They also get a little bit from berries and a little bit from fish, so they get kind of like this diverse, and they get some via trade as well. And what olive oil does is it's exclusively used to, yeah, you can see it there coming in right above the winery as the barriers are dropped off. It is exclusively used to hire mercenaries from the mercenary structures. There's the main building, the which we can see kind of towards the north here.
The mercenary camp, right? Yeah, so he... Yep. And in that mercenary camp, he had to make a choice, which he already invested into. You can see by the fact he's got Lombos. There's going to be 3 units you can get from a contract. Once you select a contract, you're locked in for that contract. The only way to get units outside of that is if you build mercenary camps near trade posts, which would happen much later in the game than this. But this raid-in from DeMu is interesting. He opened with the camel raiders, but added in the horsemen. One super sexy thing that the Ayyubids have is those camel raiders can be built out of either archery ranges or stables. So you have a little bit more omni flexibility to your production choices. Mister's response was pretty interesting, though. He dropped an archery range and then still chose the mercenary contract that would give him access to Lombos. Yes, you heard that correctly. You get Lombos as the Byzantines. Oh my god, OP tier 1 civ for all of my bronze and silver people out there that still get pummeled by Lombos. This is a new civ that's also going to do that to you.
It's a little bit different, of course, right? A lot of the Longbow's power is in the fact that you have access to network of castles and then later network of citadels. So you're going to be lacking that ever critical attack speed that kind of is baked into the power level of the unit. But yeah, definitely there's a lot going on with the Byzantines units, right? Like you said, you have 3 different contracts to choose from. And here, Mista has picked the Western contract, and as he upgrades it, it not only, in Castle Age, he can upgrade it, which will unlock the Landsknecht and upgrade the longbow to veteran. And then again, in Imp, he can upgrade it again. It'll unlock the Streltsy, upgrade the Landsknecht to elite, and upgrade the veteran longbow to elite. So then you have access to 3. Meanwhile, if you build a mercenary camp near the trade post, you can also get access to kind of these random sets. There's 5, I think 5 pairings. And so each map will just randomly spawn in. The trade post will have a different pairing, right? And so here you can see you can get Royal Knights or Horse Archers, and it all just kind of gives you a lot of flexibility on the field with what you want to train, right? But in order to get these unique units from the trade post, you need to build a mercenary camp next to the trade post. So it's a pretty big investment. Map, you have to get a vill out there. Yeah, it's a lot to get that.
Some maps, though, are going to have opportunities to do that, like the ones that spawn a trade post behind you. Something to keep in mind, if I'm not mistaken, those trade post mercenary camps they'll produce the units 50% faster, right? That's kind of another element to the trade-off. And you can, I don't think you can build your regular units, right? You have to then build the trade post type out of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Out of what, sorry?
So if you place the mercenary camps near the neutral trade post, I can't remember. Can you still produce?
You can both. Yeah, you have both. You have you have the
so no
neutral
downside.
Units and your camp. Yeah. It's really. Oh, also, if you build it next to the trade post, that mercenary camp will also build 50% faster. So it's pretty potent. If you can get a little setup over there, you get the cistern over there. You can really get one camp producing a lot of olive oil, which gives you a lot of throughput with that resource.
Yeah, that's why, and this is why the Byzantines get complicated. It's not just the idea that you have to place these cisterns, connect them in the aqueducts, which, by the way, look fabulous. Wait until you see them on half health. There's an animation for it that is a small detail that just made me smile for this civ. But the thing to keep in mind is that there's so many there's so many different phases where you want to be on either the conscriptio, which is the increased production rate, or be on the research speed, which is dialecticus. Especially around these cast stage timings. So that's going to be a key thing. I don't expect players to nail it in the early days, but let's say Mr. goes for a cast stage timing, he's going to want to immediately switch over to that W key on the dialecticus to get these upgrades quicker. For example, with level 2 here, he'd be able to get the veteran contracts upgrade for his lombos in 30 seconds instead of a minute.
Yeah, exactly. The flexibility from the cisterns gives you this ability to kind of like create a base, but also flexibly react to the situation, which is really, really cool. And here we see Mr. doing kind of one of the more, I would say, more common. I think what we're going to see as one of the more common approaches to Byzantines is longbow limitane. It's a very cool Architor defense though activated. Really good usage of this ability. So it's kind of like emergency repair. So it has a global cooldown, but when you activate it, the villagers near the cistern that you activated on will get buffed up. They get a spear, they get some armor, and they just become a little more durable in that situation.
If we hover on them quickly, you can see their damage. Like it's going to run out, I think, in about 10 seconds. So we're going to like make core rush here. But boom. Okay. I think we missed it. That's unfortunate. And it is ridiculous, though. I've watched this buffer away any type of unit. We appreciate you for trying there, Core. But it's free, right? It's just it has, I think, a 2-minute cooldown after being used, but lasts 30 seconds.
Yeah, and it's not exactly free, right? You are using your villagers to fight, right? So it's like, I mean, if they die, you're still losing vills, right? It's emergency.
No.
Right?
I don't care, Winston. I'm going to drop a cistern in my opponent's base. Send the villagers. All right. Someone's going to find a strategy for that, by the way. I'm calling it already.
I think there are some strats actually on this map. I think I saw Puppy Paw try this once. Or I think it was Wham. He built a cistern in the middle. Because, interesting, neither player docked on this map, whereas I think you kind of need to. I think you need to contest the water on this map, because there are 4 shorefish in that. That's quite valuable in a competitive situation. And he dropped a cistern there and was like grabbing the fish with the vills, because you get olive oil from that as well, right? And he... Like, it was just really interesting. He could have activated Architoy and, like, killed the Dockville, right, from the opponent. But, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked in
No, it's fine. We're just watching Gulams die at the enemy base. These Gulams are really scary, by the way, because you got the Mamelukes Ascent, which is a really disgusting tech, actually. I think you just saw the aura come out there. The way it works is that when you kill an enemy unit, you get a 25% damage increase and a 20% movement speed increase. And this leaves all infantry types. So kind of a nuts booster, and I think it only costs 350 resources to research.
Yeah, it's a very cheap technology, and it can work very well with these Gulam FCs that we've seen from the Abbasids quite a lot, but Ayyubid's able to kind of do a similar build. Of course, there are lots of differences in how it's executed, but the idea is still quite similar, right? You want to get Gulams on the field and pressure your opponent, right? The Man-at-Arm Rush, kind of a classic in the game, and this tech works quite well, and this is very impressive here.
Yes, and this is where it gets to be a big stinger, right? Because you're getting that 20% damage buff, you're getting the double strike, and that's enough to strike back for DeMu. He gets a marking on the board. The score is now 2-1. We didn't really need it for this to go deep. If you're just tuning in and thinking maybe this could be over sooner rather than later, this is going to be a play all 7. But cool to see DeMu actually getting a win there. Mr. was really crafty on these first 2. But I think the crazy thing about this build, you mentioned we're seeing a lot of Abbasid players do this similar build with the Gulam spam. I think Ayyubids just does it better because of that Mamluk's Ascent. Like, that is a ridiculous buff. Usually this unit can be kited, but if it kills one of you, good luck getting out of range.
Well, you're lacking boot camp, right? So that's a pretty core difference between the two, I would say. But yeah,
I feel like I take that, though, right? Like, because it's boot camp, it's 10 or it's 15%, right? Which is quite a lot of health.
HP versus like 1 or 2 units every now and then getting a buff. It's very, it depends. It very much depends. Like if you're raiding with the Gulams, probably, right? Like it's quite good.